The Galactic Council had gathered once again, and this time it was to discuss the rising powers in the galaxy. The room, filled with alien representatives from all corners of space, buzzed with conversation. These beings had seen countless wars, powerful empires, and terrifying fleets, but today there was something new on the table. A tiny fleet of human ships had been spotted in the outer reaches of the galaxy, and they were making their way toward the Council. The aliens in the room exchanged confused glances. The human ships were small, barely more than a collection of rusting metal and outdated technology. It was laughable. "Is this a joke?" An alien general from the Valorians scoffed. "These humans, they actually think they can be a threat with such pathetic ships." The room filled with quiet laughter. The Valorians were a powerful race known for their massive warships, which were capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single blast. Their ships gleamed with advanced technology, towering over the small human vessels. The humans had always been seen as weak and insignificant by the galaxy's more powerful species. In the corner of the room, Commander Elena Ward of the human fleet sat silently. She had heard the mockery before, but she refused to respond. Her fleet, though small, had a purpose. She knew her people. They were not like the alien armies who relied solely on their size and firepower. Humanity had a different strength, resilience, the ability to adapt, think quickly, and overcome impossible odds. The council meeting continued, but Elena's thoughts drifted to the fleet she commanded. The ships were far from impressive by galactic standards. Each one was only a fraction of the size of the alien behemoths they would be up against. But the humans had always been clever, using limited resources to create wonders. The ships in her fleet were a perfect example. They may not have looked like much, but they were made with human innovation, sleek, efficient, and packed with surprises. The council has decided. The lead alien, a tall being with shimmering blue skin, said as the room settled. "You may not pose a threat now, but we are curious to see what your fleet can do." With that, the council dismissed the meeting. Elena and her fleet would have to wait. The aliens would soon realize how wrong they were about humans. The tiny fleet of human ships, 3 in total, was positioned on the edge of the system, hidden behind a series of asteroid fields. Elena's orders were clear. Wait. It wasn't their time to make a show of force yet. The plan was simple, almost too simple. Lure the alien forces in, make them underestimate their size, and then strike when the time was right. As the human ships remained in the asteroid field, the Valorian fleet moved past them, heading toward a nearby planet. The human ships had cloaking technology that the aliens weren't aware of. The Valorians, in their arrogance, believed the humans couldn't keep up, but they were wrong. The alien ships were enormous. They bristled with weapons, had defensive shields that could withstand just about anything, and moved through space like monsters hunting their prey. But despite their size and strength, they had one thing the human ships didn't: overconfidence, and that would be their downfall. Elena's fleet watched the aliens move further into the system, unaware of the human ship's presence. A flicker of a smile appeared on Elena's face. She was ready. The tiny fleet wasn't just going to survive. It was going to prove something. "Stay quiet," Elena ordered over the comms. "Patience. The time will come soon." The small ships, cloaked and hidden, followed the alien fleet closely. The humans didn't need to attack just yet. They only needed to wait until the perfect moment arrived. Elena knew the aliens were underestimating them, and that was exactly what she wanted. Their mistake would be their downfall. She wasn't concerned about the size of her fleet or the outdated tech. It was all about using what they had in ways the aliens couldn't even imagine. As the alien ships approached the planet, Elena's fleet moved into position. The tiny fleet was ready to show the galaxy that sometimes the smallest force could make the biggest impact. In the council room, the aliens still laughed and joked, not realizing what was about to happen. They had no idea what they were about to face. The human fleet, small but clever, was about to turn their world upside down. Little did they know, this was only the beginning. The tiny fleet that had been mocked would soon reveal a power that no one could have predicted. The vastness of space stretched out before the alien armada as their massive ships cut through the stars. The Valorians, confident in their overwhelming strength, had no idea that the tiny human fleet, now shadowing them from a safe distance, was preparing to show them what it meant to underestimate humanity. Commander Elena Ward stood at the helm of the lead human ship, Aegis. The ship was nothing like the towering war machine-like structures of the Valorians. It was sleek, small, and almost invisible, thanks to its advanced cloaking technology. The other two ships in her fleet, Valor and Vigilance, followed her closely, their forms hidden within the dark expanse of space. Elena's hands moved over the controls with steady confidence. She wasn't just leading a fleet. She was about to lead a revolution in how these alien species saw humans. The Valorians thought their size and strength were enough to crush anything in their path, but they had no idea what the humans had up their sleeves. Ready to move in. Elena's voice was calm, but there was a spark in her eyes. She was ready. She had planned for this moment for days, and it was finally here. "Yes, Commander," came the reply from Lieutenant Jackson, who was stationed on Valor. "We're in position, just waiting for your signal." The human fleet had been tracking the Valorian ships for hours. The aliens, focused on their mission, were completely unaware that they were being watched. The humans had the perfect advantage. The Valorians believed they were far too powerful to be caught off guard by anything as small as the human ships. Elena gave a small nod. "Initiate Phase 1, she ordered. Immediately, the tiny fleet of human ships moved in. With the Valorians' large ships in their sights, the humans activated their cloaking devices. It was as if the ships vanished into thin air, becoming invisible to the alien sensors. The Valorians continued their journey, unaware that the humans were now directly behind them, closing in fast. Elena watched the Valorian ships on her screen, observing their formation. They were heading towards an asteroid field, a perfect place for the human fleet to launch its first strike. The asteroids would provide cover, allowing the tiny human ships to maneuver with speed and precision. The first part of the plan was simple: confuse the Valorians. As the human fleet advanced, Elena silently counted down in her head. Then, with perfect timing, she gave the signal. Now, in an instant, the human ships dropped their cloaks and emerged from the darkness. The Valorian sensors, unable to detect the tiny fleet just seconds earlier, now picked up 3 small, rapidly moving objects on their radar. The alien ships reacted quickly, but they were too slow. The Valorians' large, bulky ships were not built for such sudden changes in direction. Before the Valorians could fire their massive weapons, the human ships had already darted into the asteroid field. The maneuver was smooth and precise, no time wasted. The human ships darted between the rocks, using the terrain as both a shield and a means of rapid movement. The Valorians struggled to keep up, their ships too large and slow to follow. "Engage," Elena ordered, her voice firm. The human fleet was now in attack mode. The small ships, despite their size, were equipped with advanced weaponry and shields. The first wave of fire came from Aegis, striking the lead Valorian ship. The blast was precise, hitting a weak spot in the alien ship's hull. The Valorian ship's shields flickered for a moment but held firm, though the damage was clear. "Direct hit," Lieutenant Jackson called out. "Their shields are weakening. Let's keep it up." Elena felt a thrill run through her. The humans hadn't just survived. They had hit the aliens hard. She could feel the shift in the air. The Valorians were no longer laughing at the tiny fleet. The attack had proven that even small ships, with the right strategies, could cause massive damage. The Valorians quickly retaliated, their massive weapons firing into the asteroid field, sending massive blasts in every direction. But the human ships were too fast. They weaved and dodged, using the rocks as shields. The larger alien ships couldn't maneuver with the same agility. "Get ready for Phase 2, Elena ordered, her eyes glued to the screen. The second phase of the plan was about to unfold. The tiny fleet was not just using brute force, it was using strategy. The human ships were moving like shadows, appearing from behind asteroids and disappearing again just as quickly. The Valorians were disoriented, their larger ships unable to react fast enough. One of the Valorian commanders, a tall alien named Varker, watched the unfolding chaos with growing disbelief. What are these humans? How are they doing this? He ordered his ships to regroup, but it was clear the humans had already gained the upper hand. The tide of the battle was shifting. The tiny human fleet had just begun to make its mark, and already it was clear that things were not going as the Valorians had expected. They had underestimated humanity's resourcefulness and cunning. What they thought would be a simple mission to deal with insignificant human ships was turning into a dangerous game of cat and mouse. The battle was far from over, but the Valorians were starting to realize the tiny fleet they had mocked was far more than they had bargained for. The battle in the asteroid field had become a whirlwind of action. The Valorians, once so confident in their size and power, were struggling to deal with the speed and agility of the tiny human fleet. Alina Ward's calm voice cut through the chaos on the comms, giving clear orders to her crew. "Keep moving. Don't give them a chance to target you," she commanded. Her voice was steady, but inside, she was feeling the rush. This was the moment she had trained for. The Valorians might have had the firepower, but the humans had something far more dangerous: intelligence and the ability to think on their feet. Alina had always believed that the true strength of humanity wasn't in size or numbers, but in their ingenuity. The asteroid field was becoming more treacherous by the second. Large rocks tumbled through space, colliding with each other and sending shockwaves across the area. The human ships were darting in and out of the rocks, each movement calculated and precise. Every time a Valorian ship fired, it missed. The larger alien vessels couldn't keep up. But the Valorians weren't completely out of the fight yet. Their ships, though slow to maneuver, were still capable of devastating power. One of the Valorian ships, Valker, fired a massive beam into the asteroid field, aimed at the Aegis. The beam was powerful enough to tear through the largest asteroids, but Alina had already anticipated it. "Now, Aegis," she called, and in an instant, the ship veered sharply to the left, narrowly avoiding the beam. The Valorian weapon struck an asteroid instead, sending a shockwave that rattled the human ships. The force was enough to shake them, but not enough to do any real damage. "Nice move, Commander," Lieutenant Jackson said over the comms, his voice full of respect. Alina didn't reply right away. Her eyes were locked onto the Valorian fleet, analyzing every move they made. She knew that if the battle dragged on too long, the humans would have to face the full force of the Valorian weapons. Time was on their side for now, but they couldn't afford to waste it. "Phase 2. Activate," Alina ordered. The Aegis and its fleet mates, Valor and Vigilance, began to move in sync. The Valorians had grouped their ships together in a defensive formation, clearly trying to protect their weak points. Alina's fleet, however, wasn't playing by the same rules. They scattered, each ship moving in unpredictable patterns. The Valorians couldn't predict where the next strike would come from. Jackson's voice crackled in her ear. "They're confused, Commander. They didn't expect this." Alina smiled. She had known that the Valorians were used to overwhelming force, and they didn't know how to handle the unexpected. The human fleet was like a swarm of bees, small, hard to track, and able to sting at the most unexpected moments. As the battle continued, the human ships began to make their move. Aegis fired first, launching a series of missiles that whizzed through the asteroid field, narrowly missing the Valorian ships. The missiles weren't meant to cause major damage. They were designed to confuse and scatter the enemy. The Valorians fired their massive weapons at the incoming projectiles, but the human ships were already moving again, shifting positions. One of the Valorian ships, Valker, fired a devastating shot at the Valor, but the human ship managed to deploy a countermeasure at the last second. A small, well-placed decoy caused the Valorian weapon to lock onto the wrong target. The Valorians had no idea how the humans were managing to stay one step ahead. Elena could see the cracks in the Valorians' confidence. They were losing control of the battle. Each time they thought they had the human fleet in their sights, the humans were gone, slipping away like shadows. Suddenly, Elena's screen blinked. A red warning light flashed. One of the Valorian ships had targeted Vigilance directly. "Lieutenant Harper, get out of there now," Elena shouted. But it was too late. The Vigilance was hit by a massive beam, sending shockwaves through the ship. The lights flickered, and alarms blared in the background. "Commander, we've lost shields," came Harper's voice, strained and shaky. Elena's heart sank, but she knew they had to push forward. "Hold steady. We'll get you out of this." The Vigilance was damaged, but it wasn't finished yet. Elena quickly adjusted her strategy. She couldn't let this setback stop them. The mission was too important. "Phase 3, now," she ordered. The human ships regrouped, weaving together in tight formation. It was time for the final move. The Valorians had underestimated the humans' ability to fight back, and now they were about to realize just how powerful the tiny fleet truly was. Elena felt the ship lurch as Aegis powered forward, charging into the heart of the Valorian formation. The human ships didn't need to win this battle by brute force. They just needed to make the Valorians realize they had been wrong about them. One of the Valorian ships, Valkyr, attempted to turn its weapons on Aegis, but it was too late. With a swift, coordinated strike, the human fleet fired everything they had. The blast hit the Valkyr's engines, disabling it. The Valorians, once so sure of their victory, were now forced to retreat. The tiny human fleet had won this round. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. The Valorians had finally learned what it meant to underestimate humanity. Elena Ward knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy would soon realize that the human fleet, small, swift, and clever, was a force to be reckoned with. The retreat of the Valorian fleet was a sight to behold. They had been outsmarted by humans, and their pride had taken a hard blow. Elena Ward watched from the command center of the Aegis as the enemy ships began to break formation, trying to make a quick escape. The human fleet, though smaller and more vulnerable, had won the battle, and the Valorians now realized they were facing something they hadn't expected: human ingenuity. "Commander Ward, we've secured the battlefield," Lieutenant Jackson reported, his voice filled with both relief and awe. "The Valorians are retreating. They're not going to engage again anytime soon." Elena allowed herself a small smile. She had known from the start that this was possible. The Valorians might have more firepower, but they didn't have the flexibility and creative thinking that humans did. The battle was a testament to what could happen when strategy, speed, and courage came together. But despite the victory, Elena knew they couldn't celebrate yet. The Valorians might have retreated, but they wouldn't give up so easily. Their pride had been wounded, and they were likely already planning their next move. "We need to stay sharp," Elena said, her voice steady and focused. "I don't trust them to give up just because they lost one battle. Prepare the fleet for possible pursuit." The crew of the Aegis sprang into action. Officers checked their weapons, made sure their shields were still intact, and recalibrated their navigation systems. The asteroid field might have shielded them for now, but once they moved out, they would be exposed. Back on the Vigilance, Lieutenant Harper was busy overseeing repairs. The ship had taken a beating, but it wasn't beyond saving. The damage to the engine was serious, but not critical. The crew was already working on fixing the shields and reprogramming the communication system. "Commander, we'll be ready to move out in a few hours," Harper reported over the comms. "We've taken some hits, but nothing we can't handle." Elena nodded. She had full confidence in her crew. Despite the damage, the human fleet was more than capable of bouncing back quickly. They had to, because she knew the Valorians wouldn't stop. Just as Elena was about to give another order, a warning light flashed on her console. She immediately checked it. The Valorians had sent out a scout ship to monitor their retreat, and it was now heading straight for the human fleet. "They're not wasting time," Alina muttered. "They want to know exactly where we are. Prepare to engage." Jackson glanced over at her, his expression serious. "You think they're planning another attack?" "Most likely. But this time, we'll be ready," Alina replied, her voice filled with determination. The small scout ship appeared on the radar. It was fast, but it didn't have the firepower or shields of the larger Valorian ships. Alina's plan was simple. Take it out quickly before it could report back to the main fleet. "We'll hit them hard and fast," Alina ordered. "Aegis, Valor, and Vigilance, prepare to launch all fighter drones. Let's make sure they don't get away." The human ships moved quickly, positioning themselves in a triangular formation. The scout ship, unaware of the trap, continued its course, heading straight for the fleet. The distance between them closed, and the human ships launched their drones. "Engaging," Lieutenant Jackson called out. The drones sped forward, weaving in and out of the asteroid field, closing the distance between them and the scout ship. The Valorians had no time to react as the first wave of drones hit their target. A series of explosions rocked the scout ship, sending it tumbling through space. The remaining drones continued their assault, firing precision shots at the vulnerable areas of the Valorian vessel. Alina watched closely. This was a critical moment. If they allowed the Valorians to get away again, it would only be a matter of time before they regrouped and launched another attack. The humans had to make sure the scout ship was completely disabled. "Get ready for the final strike," Alina said. The drones were in position, and with one coordinated move, they fired a final barrage of missiles at the scout ship. The blast was powerful enough to disable the ship's engines and shields. It would take the Valorians weeks to repair it, and by then, the human fleet would be long gone. "Scout ship disabled," Lieutenant Harper reported, his voice steady despite the intensity of the situation. "No signs of life. They won't be able to report back." Alina allowed herself a brief moment of relief. They had taken out the scout ship before it could get away. But the battle wasn't over yet. The Valorians would likely send reinforcements soon. The real test would be whether or not the human fleet could hold off a full-scale assault. "We've got one chance to make this count," Alina said. "Prepare for a surprise attack when the reinforcements arrive. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we don't give them a chance to regroup." As she gave the orders, Alina looked out at the stars. The victory so far had been incredible, but she knew that the toughest challenges were still ahead. The Valorians wouldn't forget their defeat, and they would return with greater force. The tiny human fleet was about to face its biggest challenge yet, but Alina knew they would stand strong. Humanity was small, but they were fierce. The human fleet stood ready for the inevitable. The Valorians, wounded and humiliated by their defeat, would not let it slide. The thought of a small fleet, one that had been mocked as insignificant, outsmarting their advanced technology, was too much to bear. Alina Ward knew this wasn't over. The real battle was just beginning. The stars ahead of them twinkled peacefully, but Alina couldn't shake the feeling that danger was lurking just beyond the horizon. The enemy would soon return, and they would bring more ships. She needed to be ready for whatever came next. "Alina," Lieutenant Jackson's voice came through the comms. "We've detected incoming ships. It's them. The Valorians are coming." Alina's hand tightened on the armrest of her command chair. It wasn't surprising. The scout ship's failure had only made the Valorians angrier. They were now bringing reinforcements. The fleet would be outnumbered, but the human ships had something the Valorians didn't: human ingenuity. "How long until they're in range?" Alina asked, her mind already calculating their options. 30 minutes, Commander," Jackson replied. "We'll need to move fast if we want to make the first strike." Alina turned to her crew, who were already preparing for the next phase. The battle ahead would test everything they had. The human ships were smaller, but they were quick and adaptable. and the crews had a fierce determination to protect Earth at all costs. "Let's make it count," Alina said, her voice steady. "We'll surprise them again. Get all systems ready for an ambush. We'll use the asteroid belt to our advantage." The asteroid field had already proven to be their ally once. Its vast, floating rocks created the perfect cover for a surprise attack. The Valorians had underestimated how well the humans knew the terrain, and Alina intended to use that knowledge once again. They wouldn't be able to outrun the enemy, but they could outsmart them. "We're going to need the drones again," Alina continued. "Have them ready to deploy on my mark." As the fleet positioned itself behind the floating asteroids, Alina felt a deep sense of pride for her crew. They had come so far from being mocked as an insignificant force. Now they were a real threat, capable of taking on an entire fleet of the most advanced species the galaxy had ever seen. "Commander, the Valorians are coming into the asteroid field," Jackson reported, his voice tense. "They're moving slower than we thought. They must be cautious after the last encounter." Alina nodded. The Valorians were used to dominating their enemies with sheer firepower, but they had underestimated the one thing that humans had in abundance: creativity. The larger Valorian ships were slow and clumsy in the asteroid field, and their advanced weapon systems weren't as effective when surrounded by debris. "This is our moment," Alina said, her tone sharp. "Let's take them down before they realize what's happening." With her order, the human fleet sprang into action. The drones launched from each ship, swarming around the asteroids like a cloud of angry hornets. The human ships moved quickly, weaving in and out of the asteroids, making themselves difficult to target. The Valorians, confident that they would quickly crush the human fleet, had no idea what was coming. The first wave of drones attacked swiftly, hitting the Valorian ships with precision. Alina's eyes never left the tactical display as explosions lit up the darkness. She could see the Valorian ships trying to retaliate, but the asteroid field was a labyrinth, and they were losing their sense of direction. The human ships continued to move with agility, dodging laser fire and delivering swift, deadly blows. The larger Valorian ships were too slow to respond effectively. Alina could see the confusion setting in among the enemy ranks. They had never faced this kind of fighting before. The humans were unpredictable and relentless. "Alina, we disabled their lid ship," Jackson shouted. "It's going down." Alina couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The Valorians were finally realizing that humans were not to be underestimated. The Aegis, Valor, and Vigilance were coordinating their attacks flawlessly. Every move they made was designed to disorient and overwhelm the enemy, and it was working. But just as the Valorians began to retreat once again, something unexpected happened. A new, much larger ship appeared on the edge of the battlefield, emerging from the darkness. This ship was unlike anything the humans had seen before. It was massive, with armor that glinted in the starlight, and its weapons looked far more advanced than anything the Valorians had used before. Alina's heart sank. She had been hoping for a quick victory, but now it was clear that the Valorians were bringing out their heavy artillery. The battle was far from over. "This is bad," Jackson muttered. "That ship's going to tip the scales in their favor." Alina stared at the new enemy ship, trying to come up with a plan. They had to act fast. If they allowed the Valorians to regroup, they would be in serious trouble. But this new ship was unlike anything the human fleet had ever faced. "Alina, we're going to need more drones," Lieutenant Harper said urgently. "We'll need everything we've got to take that ship down." Alina took a deep breath, her mind racing. They had faced impossible odds before and won. This wouldn't be any different. They had to be smarter, faster, and more determined than ever. "We're not backing down," Alina said, her voice full of resolve. "Prepare for the fight of our lives. Launch everything we have." The massive Valorian ship loomed in front of them, its dark hull gleaming against the backdrop of stars. The human fleet, now vastly outnumbered, gathered their strength for what would undoubtedly be the toughest battle yet. Alina Ward felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. This new Valorian vessel was unlike anything they had faced before. If they couldn't defeat it, everything they had fought for could be lost. "Elena, that ship's power readings are off the charts." Lieutenant Jackson's voice was tight with concern. "We've never encountered anything this advanced before." Elena glanced at the tactical screen. The new Valorian ship was massive, easily 4 times the size of the others, and its weapons systems appeared to be far more powerful. It was a ship built for domination, designed to strike fear into the hearts of anyone who dared oppose the Valorian Empire. But that didn't scare Elena. No matter how big the enemy seemed, the humans had proven time and time again that they could overcome impossible odds. "We've faced worse," Elena said, her voice steady. "We'll find a way." She turned to her crew, who were working quickly to ready the fleet for the final push. The Aegis, Valor, and Vigilance were all armed and prepared to fight to the last man, but it was clear that this new enemy ship required a different strategy. "Elena, if we try to attack it head-on, we'll be wiped out in seconds," Lieutenant Harper warned, his brow furrowed. "We need to be smarter than that." "I know," Elena replied. "We'll use the asteroid field again, just like before. We can't outgun it, but we can outmaneuver it. We'll hit it where it's weak." The human fleet had learned from the previous battles that the Valorians relied too heavily on their powerful weapons, ignoring the importance of agility and adaptability. Elena had already decided that the only way to win was to strike fast and hard, using every advantage they had. "Elena, we've got incoming fire," Jackson warned as the massive Valorian ship unleashed a barrage of laser fire toward the fleet. "It's targeting us directly." Elena gritted her teeth. They had no choice but to move fast. The Valorian ship was powerful, but it was also slow. If they could get in close, they could exploit its weaker points. "Get the drones in the air," Elena ordered. "We'll need every distraction we can get. As soon as we're in position, we attack." The human ships darted through the asteroid field, using the floating rocks as cover. The drones shot off from the Aegis, Valor, and Vigilance, swarming the Valorian ship like a cloud of angry bees. The Valorian ship responded with fury, launching missiles and laser blasts in every direction, trying to hit the agile drones that zipped through the field. Elena gripped the armrest of her command chair as she watched the battle unfold. The drones were doing their job, distracting the Valorians and causing chaos. The human ships continued to maneuver through the asteroid field, weaving in and out of the floating debris. The Valorian ship's weapons fired again and again, but it was clear that the enemy was struggling to keep up with the speed and unpredictability of the humans. "Elena, we're in position." Lieutenant Harper's voice was sharp. "We've got a clear shot at its weapon systems." "Do it," Elena commanded. "Take it down now." The Aegis fired first, its cannons targeting the Valorian ship's weapons array. The other ships followed suit, launching their own salvos of laser fire and missiles. The Valorian ship's defenses were strong, but it wasn't built to defend against this kind of coordinated, rapid assault. The weapons array exploded in a brilliant flash of light, sending shockwaves through the massive ship. "Elena, it's working," Jackson said, his voice filled with excitement. "We've taken out their weapons systems." But even as they celebrated their success, Elena knew the battle wasn't won yet. The Valorian ship was still capable of devastating attacks, and its sheer size gave it a level of durability the human fleet couldn't match. They had taken out its weapons, but now they needed to disable its engines. "Elena, they're starting to retreat," Harper said. "They're trying to get out of the asteroid field." "No, we can't let them escape," Elena said. "We finish this now." The human ships closed in, using the asteroid field to hide their movements. The Valorian ship, now unable to defend itself, tried to flee, but it was no match for the relentless speed and precision of the human fleet. Elena's heart raced as she watched the massive ship struggle to make its escape. With one final coordinated strike, the human ships launched everything they had. The Aegis, Valor, and Vigilance hit the Valorian ship's engines with pinpoint accuracy, causing a massive explosion that sent debris scattering through space. The Valorian ship, once so powerful, was now a burning wreck, drifting through the stars. "Elena, we did it," Jackson said, his voice filled with awe. Elena let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. They had won. Against all odds, the tiny fleet had defeated the Valorian Empire's most powerful ship. The battle was over. For now. The debris from the destroyed Valorian warship scattered through space like a deadly field of jagged metal. Elena Ward and her crew stared at the burning wreckage on their screens. It was a sight they had dreamed of for weeks, but now that the battle was over, it felt like the weight of the universe had been lifted from their shoulders. "We did it," Lieutenant Harper said quietly, his voice filled with disbelief. "We actually did it." Elena didn't answer at first. She watched the glowing wreckage of the Valorian ship, still feeling the pounding in her chest from the battle. The mission wasn't over yet. The war had not been won, but this victory, this small victory, was a symbol of the human spirit, of everything they had fought for. "Not yet," Elena replied after a long pause. "We need to make sure they can't rebuild. We can't afford to let them come back." Jackson spoke next, his voice crackling with excitement. "The fleet's still intact, Elena. We've won. We've got the upper hand now." She nodded but stayed focused on the task ahead. The human fleet had done the impossible, defeating a force far stronger and more advanced. But Elena knew that the war was far from over. There were still other Valorian ships out there, still threats they would have to face. This battle might have been a victory, but it was just one step in a much larger journey. "We need to send a message," Elena said, "to every ship, to every fleet across the galaxy. Humanity isn't just some small species that can be ignored. We fight back. We win." The crew quickly set to work. Messages were sent across all communication channels, a statement to the galaxy that the human fleet had taken down the mighty Valorian warship. It wasn't just a message of victory. It was a declaration that humanity was capable of much more than anyone had ever realized. Back on Earth, the news began to spread. People were waking up to the fact that the small human fleet, the one that had been mocked by other species as weak and insignificant, had pulled off a miracle. Stories began to circulate, not just among humans, but throughout the galaxy. The humans, who had always been underestimated, were now seen as a powerful force to be reckoned with. Elena sat back in her chair, taking a deep breath. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself a moment of peace. The pressure that had been building for months, for years, seemed to fade as the adrenaline wore off. She knew that the battles ahead would be just as dangerous, if not more so. But for now, she allowed herself to savor this victory. "This changes everything," she said softly. "Yeah," Harper agreed. "I think the Valorians just learned it the hard way." The crew of the Aegis shared a moment of relief. They had just proven that humanity, when pushed to the brink, could do the impossible. They had defied the odds and had shown the universe that humans were a force to be reckoned with. They weren't just a tiny, insignificant species anymore. They were something much more. Elena turned to face the crew, her expression determined. "We can't stop here. There's still a lot of work to do. But we've shown the galaxy that humanity is ready. We're not just survivors. We're fighters." The crew nodded, understanding the weight of her words. They had won this battle. But the war was far from over. They had shown that with intelligence, determination, and a little bit of luck, humanity could stand tall against any opponent, no matter how strong or advanced. As the Aegis drifted in the vastness of space, Elena's thoughts turned to what lay ahead. The Valorians were not the only threat. There were still many unknowns out there, and new challenges awaited them. But now, they had a new strength, the knowledge that they could overcome anything if they worked together. They had won one battle, but the fight was far from over. "Ready the fleet," Elena said, her voice firm. "It's time to move forward." The Aegis, Valor, and Vigilance set course for the next mission. They weren't just human ships anymore. They were symbols of hope, of resilience, and of defiance. They had proven that humanity would not back down, no matter what the universe threw at them. As they traveled toward the unknown, the galaxy now knew the truth. Humanity might be small, but they were mighty. And this tiny fleet had only just begun to show their strength.